Hello and welcome to episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Tuesday, May 23rd. Hope everybody's having a day so far and had a good rest of their day yesterday. It is in fact Tuesday, May 23rd here today. We've got a lot to unpack, a lot to get into here on this Tuesday program. Back-to-back days, back-to-back podcasts coming at you with a lot of content here over the next couple weeks and heading into the summer. We'll be talking all things baseball, basketball, football, and hockey, as you know, here on the show. Yankees tonight against the Orioles, Mets tonight against the Cubs. Both teams look to continue their winning ways after a very, very successful weekend in New York baseball, with the Mets getting 2 of 3 against Tampa last week and then sweeping the Guardians, and the Yankees taking 3 of 4 against Toronto during the week last week and then sweeping the Cincinnati Reds this past weekend in Cincinnati. They'll head back home for a 6-game homestand starting up tonight. 3 against Baltimore, 3 against San Diego. For the Mets, it's a 6-game road trip, 3 in Chicago, and then 3 at the end of the week, Friday through Sunday against Colorado. So a lot to look forward to. You hope to see, we'll see if both teams can continue their winning ways, can continue their, streaks. Obviously, the Yankees have been playing better for a little bit now. Mets just started playing better here really over the past, 3-4 games. So we'll see how all that goes down today. We got a lot to get into today. Last night, the Nuggets punched their ticket, I should say, to the NBA Finals with a 113-111 win over the Los Angeles Lakers, knocking LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and the Lakers out. We're going to get into last night's game, talk about this series as a whole. I know I touched a little bit on it yesterday, but we'll go a little bit more in depth today. What is LeBron's future with the Lakers? Is he with the Lakers next year? Does he retire? What is going to happen with LeBron? He left some comments in his post-game press conference that's making the NBA world scratch their heads a little bit, think a little bit as to what his future is and what is LeBron James going to do after getting swept here in the Western Conference Finals, ending this Lakers, I guess you want to call it surprising postseason run. I don't know if that's the right word. I think a lot of people expected the Lakers to maybe make a run, but to get swept and not even really they kind of look lifeless in games 1 through 3. Showed life in the first half yesterday and then came out in the third and had one of their worst quarters of the series. And they take the loss and they get swept, and it's bad. And the Nuggets are really good, and they're more talented, and last night showed yet again. Even on an off night, really, for them, they were still able to go out and get a big win. So Nuggets move on. They will face most likely the Heat unless if they choke away a 3-0 series lead. Game 4 tonight for them. We'll also get into Mekhi Becton's comments, get a little basketball, talk a little football as well. OTA Day 1 was yesterday for the New York Jets, and it was awesome to see Aaron Rodgers just throwing the ball. Just seeing clips of Aaron Rodgers throwing to Uzomah. There was a clip of him, rushing for a touchdown, doing a couple pump fakes and getting into the end zone. Obviously, a lot of excitement around this team. I believe the media today will be at practice, so we'll probably see a lot more clips, probably see a lot more, just action, a lot more of what's going on, in the drills and stuff and how everybody's doing. But Mekhi Becton made some comments, I think it was, 2 days ago or yesterday, whatever it was. I think it was yesterday. Made some comments about the Jets and about, his whole situation with the injury going back to last year. And it just seems like there's some sort of friction there with Becton and the Jets coaching staff. Even with Becton being back and healthy and he looks great, there still seems to be a disconnect between Mekhi Becton and the coaching staff. And is this going to affect what he does this year, where he plays this season? How is it going to affect Mekhi Becton going into the season? We'll get into that and much more later on. But we'll start today talking about the Lakers and the Nuggets last night. Lakers looked good, as I mentioned, to open the show today. Looked good for about 2 quarters. Came out in the third quarter and looked lost. Got outscored by 20. Nuggets put up 36 in the third. Lakers put up 16. And to give you perspective, the Lakers had a 34-point first quarter and had a 39-point second quarter. They outscored the Nuggets 19 points in the second quarter. They went into halftime with a massive, massive lead. And you go into, or they outscored the Nuggets rather by 9 points, 39-30. They went into halftime with a massive, massive lead. About what was it, like 9 points, 10 points? More than that, like 13 points, I guess, 16, 15 points, something like that. It was about 16 points, whatever it was. They went into halftime with a massive lead. They come out and they blow it. And yesterday was kind of the story of the series for the Lakers. where they have some stretches. Ultimately, they couldn't put a full game together. And the Nuggets, again, showed last night why they are the most talented team, why they are the more talented team, I should say, than the Lakers. They didn't shoot that well from three. They didn't have their best night ever. Again, the Lakers came out firing. The Lakers came out, they looked good. They were hitting shots. They were hitting threes. Early on, I think they were 6 of 10 from three. They were shooting like 60%. Obviously, that died down, but for a team that couldn't hit a three earlier in the series, to being able to hit threes early on was crucial for the Lakers. And yet, even with all that, the Nuggets on, I guess you could maybe say, a little bit of an off night early on shooting, whereas a team, they shot 48%, 36% from three, but all in all, they shot well, especially late. The Nuggets ultimately showed again, even where the Lakers had early success, they were the more talented team. Their scoring came through again. Nikola Jokic, 45 minutes, 30 points, 14 boards, 13 assists, triple-double came through yet again. And the Nuggets get the series win. And that's kind of how the series was all along. And, it's funny because you go into this series and, you go into this series and again, there was a lot of people. I should go back to the start of the postseason. You go back to the start of the postseason with the Lakers where they're a play-in team. They've got to get into the postseason. And you're like, okay, we'll see what they can do. Obviously, they missed the postseason last year. Weren't even in it. They had a horrible start this year, 2-10. They had some crucial acquisitions at the trade deadline like D'Angelo Russell and Rui Hachimura that really was a big reason why this team even got to this position. Obviously they didn't have the greatest series ever. D'Lo got taken out of the lineup yesterday. I mean, Rui Hachimura did not shoot well last night, went 3 of 12 from the floor and didn't hit a 3 in 3 tries. Despite that, they were big pieces. And at the beginning of the year, this team was horrible. I mean, you were talking about them, what they were going to do at the deadline. How much longer is LeBron James going to be in L.A. with, this losing? 2-10 at the start. They were one of the worst teams in basketball to start the year. You go into the playoffs, and you're like, all right, they were healthy. They finished the year on a strong note. They got into the postseason. They were 43-39. You're like, all right, let's see what they can do. Again, it's LeBron James, it's Anthony Davis. Any given night, they can beat any team. At the end of the day, you have one of the greatest basketball players of all time, and you got a very good offensive threat in Anthony Davis, and we all know what Anthony Davis is when he's healthy. So at the end of the day, two guys that are healthy, you have 2 top 10 basketball players on your team. And they get through the first round, get through the second round, and you get here. It just, you could just tell that it wasn't, the Nuggets were just the better team. And again, they passed Memphis in the first round, beat Golden State in the second round, got to this Western Conference Finals. Nuggets were just better. And as I talked about it yesterday, as much as all postseason long we talked about, the Lakers, and I talked about this with the Lakers, and I was a little bit wrong about the Lakers. I didn't think they would get all the way to the Western Conference Finals. I thought they would get close. I thought they would win definitely a playoff series. My biggest thing with the Lakers was, and a lot of people made this point, the biggest concern again was the injuries. Like if it was a 1-game March Madness tournament where you got one game and however many rounds it is, right? Round to 32. Obviously, it's less for the NBA, but if it was like March Madness where you have to win one game and move on, you would take the Lakers every night because in one game the Lakers can beat you. In 7 games, in 4 7-game series, are they capable of doing that? And that was kind of the question. And it showed this series. Even though they were healthy, even though they weren't injured and they had all their weapons, you could tell they were worn down. You could tell they were kind of tired. Everything that was working in the first 2 series was not working during this series. And a part of that, again, is how good the Nuggets are. They finished with the 3rd best record in all of basketball, best record in the Western Conference at 53-29 this season. They've got Nikola Jokic, who many still say is the MVP, and Embiid wins the MVP, but at the end of the day, the MVP doesn't matter right now because Nikola Jokic is going to play for an NBA final, and most likely he'll be going up against the Heat, while Joel Embiid is at home without a head coach figuring out what his future is in Philly. So it just shows you the MVP doesn't mean a whole lot if you can't perform in the postseason. And that's also something else to take away from this series was the fact that Nikola Jokic missed out on MVP. He's won MVP, obviously. But at the end of the day, it's the postseason success that matters. If you can perform in the postseason, it's a whole lot better than winning MVPs and getting knocked out in the second round and losing in a Game 7. losing a game that you just get blown out in, like the Sixers did. Nikola Jokic proved yet again why he's one of the best threats in basketball. And the Lakers had no answer of slowing him down. They had no answer. It's something about this. Something, too, about it, the Nuggets have more than one offensive threat. They really do. They do. And, what Jokic can do. We saw what Jamal Murray can do. I know last night he had kind of a cold night from three, but what he's able to do. Michael Porter Jr. has given him a nice boost as well. They are a very solid, deep team. Aaron Gordon last night, I know he obviously got into the scuffle with LeBron, but he stepped up, gave them 22. Look at last night. Look at the numbers. And this is, again, just proving why the Nuggets are the more talented, more deeper team, and that's ultimately what it came down to in the series. Aaron Gordon, 22 points. Michael Porter Jr., 15 points. Jokic, 30. Triple-double, by the way, as I mentioned earlier. Jamal Murray, 25. Kadavius Caldwell-Pope, 13. That was your scoring last night for the Nuggets, their starting rotation. You look at the Lakers. LeBron got no help last night. 21 from Davis, 10 from Rui Hachimura, 40 from LeBron, 13 from Schroeder, 17 from Reeves. Not everyone was getting involved. It was all LeBron. LeBron had no help. LeBron really had no help. Look at the other numbers. 3 of 12 from the field. Schroeder he was solid, 5 of 13. He cooled off. He was hot early, cooled off a little bit. The Lakers last night shot as a team 46.5%, and they shot 40% from three. They had their best night shooting. But yet again, Nuggets came back. Nuggets came back late. That third quarter killed them. And now you go into an offseason with the Lakers where you kind of have questions as to what's going to happen. Now, look, if you had to ask me right now, do I think LeBron James retires? Probably not. He's mentioned many times, Bronny James is going to USC to play. Obviously, he'll be in the NBA in a year or two. Going to USC, number one prospect, all that good stuff. So he'll be there. He'll be in California, all that stuff. Whether or not LeBron, again, I don't think it's LeBron retires. I think the question is whether or not he stays with the Lakers. Because he's mentioned, again, many times he wants to play with his son when he gets to the NBA. Now, is that with the Lakers? Who knows? In order to play with Bronny James, you're probably going to have to win the draft. You're probably going to have to play for a team that just won the draft lottery. And I know people joke about that, like, oh, LeBron James joining the Magic, but it's the truth. Like, it's going to be a really bad team that gets Bronny James because they're going to win the draft lottery, assuming he's probably the number one overall pick. So if LeBron wants to do that, he can go to that team for 1 year or 2 years or however long it may be. Who knows? Again, LeBron, it's an interesting spot. Does he stay with the Lakers? Bronny James is in California. Does he stay there, stick it out, and then kind of reassess it after Bronny James gets drafted? How does that all play out? I don't think he just flats out retires. Does he go elsewhere? He's probably frustrated. He just got swept, and he kind of mentioned that last night. As much as a lot of people view this season as a success for the Lakers, is it really a success for LeBron James? He lost in the Western Conference Finals. When you're grading him on a scale with guys like Michael Jordan and some of the greatest of all time, losing in the Western Conference Finals is not going to help your legacy. It's only going to hurt you. And getting swept in the Western Conference Finals, getting swept in the Conference Finals to begin with. Sure, if this was and that's what I hate right now with some of these people in the media. They're like, oh, what a successful season for the Lakers. Yeah, I get that, but from a LeBron James perspective, this was not a successful season. It would be one thing if this was a really bad team. Like it'd be one thing if the Nets, for example, a team that sold away all these pieces, got to the Eastern Conference Finals. And if they got swept, it would have been like, man, they got 2 rounds further than we expected them to. They got through Philly, and they got through Boston. Nobody expected that, right? That would have been the path the Nets would have had to take. And if they would have lost to the Heat in 4, not that people wouldn't have cared, but it would have been like, all right, how in the world would he get this far to begin with? But when you have LeBron James on your team, when you have the standards that he sets, when you look at his legacy, losing in the conference finals is tough. And it's not a good look. And I think that's, again, what separates it. And I'm not against LeBron. I'm not trying to just turn this into a LeBron-Michael Jordan debate, but I think that, again, proves why Michael Jordan is the GOAT. he's gone to 6 NBA Finals and won 6 times. LeBron James, especially recently, has struggled. He struggled last year. They weren't even in the postseason. They get to the conference finals this year, they get swept. They really show no signs of life until last night, the first half, and then they get blown out in the second half, or blown out really in the third quarter, because they came back in the fourth quarter and made it interesting. So, it's tough. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be an intriguing offseason in LA. Again, I mean, what does LeBron James do? Does he move on and go elsewhere? Does he go, he's already delivered. I mean, technically, he's delivered a championship already for the Lakers. I know it's the bubble, and I know a lot of people have their thoughts on that, and how much does that not count, but how much does that really matter? It was a bubble championship. You never did it at home or in front of the home crowd, all that stuff. I get a lot of people out there have their feelings about that, but he did deliver a championship to LA. He came to the Lakers. First season was rough. You go to the bubble and you win a championship. So he has done that. I know the championship with the Lakers seems so long ago, but he came to the Lakers, and similar to what he did in Cleveland, he delivered. I mean, he came to the Lakers to win a championship. He did that. And is that his mindset now? Does LeBron, and that's another thing, does LeBron look at this team, and I know Darvin Ham, again, the 2-10 start to get to this point for the franchise, for this team, for the players outside of LeBron, that was an accomplishment. When you look at the Lakers franchise, its story and all that stuff, they're not going to look back on this one and say, man, we remember that 2023 season where we got to the Western Conference Finals after such a rough start. Lakers storied franchise, they care about championships and championships only, and rightfully so. They've got a storied history, they want to win. But does LeBron look at this Lakers team and say, you know what, I can go back out there next year and we can be again right in the conversation, and this time we can finish? Does he look at this team and say that? That's the question. Can he rely on Anthony Davis staying healthy? Maybe putting together a better regular season. Because the Lakers, that's another thing too. You want to have a better chance to get into the finals. You want to have a better chance. I know the Heat aren't. An example of regular season success doesn't matter because they were an 8 seed. They obviously had to play in the play-in game, and now they're all the way here, one game away from getting to the NBA Finals. But get a higher seed, get home court, make it a little easier instead of having to play in the play-in, having to go through the 2 seed, having to go through the 1 seed in the West. So it'll be interesting to see what LeBron does. But last night, his comments saying, I have a lot to think about my future, basketball future, does make you scratch your head. And I know Chris Haynes reported last night that he is considering retirement. And look, this happens after every season. And I always say this. Every season in every sport, every league, all 4 of the major sports, every team in the league goes into the offseason with questions, except the team that wins the championship. Even the team that wins a championship goes into the offseason with questions, especially if you've got a guy on that's going to retire. Like, for example, if the Jets this year win a championship, there's still going to be questions as if Aaron Rodgers is going to come back or if he's just going to retire on a high note, right? Same thing with the Bucks. Many people thought, okay, is Brady going to retire after he won a Super Bowl just to prove that he can win elsewhere and then retire? So there is certain situations, but like you look at the Chiefs, there wasn't many polarizing questions on the Chiefs other than a couple here and there, just acquisitions. Like Patrick Mahomes is going to return. Travis Kelce is going to return. Andy Reid's going to return. They just won a championship. When you looked at the Eagles, there was a lot of questions with the Eagles. So there is going to be a lot of questions with the Lakers. We do this all the time with stars. There's always questions. It'll be interesting. Big offseason, though, in LA. And what LeBron does is going to dictate a lot of what that franchise does. Because I'll tell you this: if LeBron leaves, there's no chance they're winning a championship. They couldn't get past it this year. If AD stays there, AD's not going to take a team by himself. You're going to need another superstar, or you're just going to need to rip it apart and start over. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be intriguing. After such a promising run, a run of surprise, I think. They got manhandled. And they got manhandled by the best team in the Western Conference. And you could make the strong argument they're the best team right now remaining in the playoffs. Now, the Heat are very good. And again, they go for the sweep tonight. But there's a good chance, too, the Nuggets take care of the Heat. And I'm not saying they're going to take care of them in 4 games, but the Nuggets are good. And I talked about this yesterday. Everybody talked about all the Western Conference teams except the Nuggets. They talked about them all. The Phoenix Suns with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker? Can KD finally win that championship without Steph Curry? The Lakers, as I've talked about the entire time, I'm not going to go into any more with them. You go to the Clippers. Can they finally make a run, that they've been waiting for since signing Kawhi Leonard and Paul George? The Sacramento Kings, the new kids on the block, De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis, coaching staff, phenomenal. First time in the playoffs in ever in like whatever it was. They had the longest drought in pro sports. Could they make a run? Every team really in the Western Conference, Golden State Warriors, can they get back-to-back? Compared to the Nuggets didn't get much. And here the Nuggets are sweeping the Lakers. 113-111 last night. And tonight you'll get Celtics Heat. More coming out about Joe Mazzulla, the coach for the Celtics. He basically said, as I mentioned yesterday, I lost the locker room. I lost the locker room. So he's got to be on the hot seat. He lost his team. They're not playing for him. They don't care. There's no energy with that Celtics team. It's ugly. It's really ugly right now with the Boston Celtics. And tonight against the Heat, it's, and again, you got to remember, too, the Celtics lost 2 games at home. They lost 2 games at home to start this series. That's bad. And the Heat, they've all been pretty bad blowouts. So, I think for the Celtics, you obviously got to take it game by game, but I think Joe Mazzulla is, or Coach Mazzulla, I should say, is definitely on the hot seat right now for Celtics. Basically saying in the middle of the postseason that you lost the locker room. It's bad. And they're playing like it. They're playing like they have nobody leading the way. It's ugly. Heat are dominating, bearing a drastic comeback. It's going to be the Heat in 4. So we'll see. But that will be tonight. So both conference finals, they were not the closest series ever. They really weren't. And I know, obviously last night's game was interesting in LA, but let's be honest here, going back to Denver, the Lakers weren't going to win that series last night. They weren't going to win that series. Even if they would have got the win last night, they weren't going to win the series. All right, so we'll move on here to the New York Jets and a little bit of Mekhi Becton. As OTA started up yesterday for many teams across the NFL, along with the Jets. And again, it was great to just see some clips, some highlights of Aaron Rodgers, some clips of, just the whole team, the team as a whole, just seeing guys, at training camp or at OTAs, getting in the work, getting better, getting ready for the season. And the OTAs is an important time in the offseason. It is. It's a very important time in the offseason because this is now where you start to install some of the plays, where you start to most of the players really start to learn the Nathaniel Hackett system, the new stuff that they're going to add on it. I know that, he wanted to, Rodgers wanted to put some things into it. Hackett wanted to, mix some things up as well. So they were going to tweak this, they were going to tweak some things as well. But primarily it's the same offense. Primarily it's the same scheme. But they were going to kind of each put their own little, spice you want to put it on it as well. So that's what they're doing as well. Learning the playbook, learning the plays, learning the system is very important. And now is the time to do it. May, June. So when you get to training camp, it's all about just putting together, what each, how the receivers are going to look, how they're going to line up. Then you really start to focus on how the offensive line lines up, and then it's just boom, just full on, just continuing to get reps, continue to really install plays, and when you get into the games, so then that system now. So this is an important time for that. As Rich Cimini put it yesterday, it's a key checkpoint in the offseason for the Nathaniel Hackett offense and system. So here's just a little blurb on what Cimini wrote yesterday for ESPN. So the Jets beginning OTA practices today. That was obviously yesterday. It's voluntary. Tomorrow is the first open practice. So the media obviously will be here today. Tomorrow meant today. Storylines, first look at quarterback Aaron Rodgers, a key checkpoint for the offense as it learns Nathaniel Hackett's system. And third, the O-line is the most competitive area. But Dwayne Brown's shoulder, AVT triceps, and Mekhi Becton knee could sit out in 11 on 11. 4 new faces on the defense, which is obviously Chuck Clark, Quentin Jefferson, Will McDonald, and then also you have Al Woods. Number 5, fifth bullet here, fifth thing to look out for too is Quentin Williams in a contract dispute. He's not going to be there. So, no surprise there with Quinnen. I've talked about this a lot with Quinnen Williams. When it becomes a concern for me is if we enter into training camp and he's still not there. Like if we get to training camp, first day of training camp, and Quinnen Williams still doesn't have a contract, that's when I get worried. That's when I get, okay, this is a problem. Not even worried. That's when you start to panic. I get probably a little worried if we're like hit July and he still doesn't have a deal. You still got all of June. You still got a lot of time. I get a little worried if we hit July, mid-July, because training camp, starts like the last 3-4 days of July, and then it's all of August, and then September's the season, right? If we hit like July, and you're about 2 weeks out from training camp, that's when I start to get a little worried. We hit training camp, and he still doesn't have a deal, that's when you start to panic, because it's like, all right, now he's missing valuable reps. Now you're kind of scrambling for answers as to what you should do. And again, we saw that with Zach Wilson his rookie year. He missed like the first 2 days of training camp because he didn't have a deal done, right? And that was frustrating. That was, you kind of started to not scramble. You knew a deal was going to get done because he's a rookie, and it's not as hard to get the rookie contracts done as it is to get some of these extensions done. But with Zach, you wanted him out there. You wanted him get him out there, getting those valuable reps. Obviously, it doesn't matter much because he was horrible anyways, but just giving you an example. So, OTA is back. It's a good time. Remember, Jets fans, it's May 23rd. There's going to be probably clips today of Aaron Rodgers throwing touchdowns, and that's going to be awesome. There's probably going to be clips of the defense making plays. I always say this, you got to react in reality on both sides. You can't overreact on a touchdown. You can't overreact on an interception or a sack or a would-be sack, obviously, because there's no contact. You got to just take it and, just take the positives from the defense, take the positives from the offense, because I know how people like to overreact, definitely, to start the season. All right, so we got some stuff to talk about Becton here. So obviously Becton here, and that's really what we're getting into today. Obviously Becton here is coming off an injury. Jets just declined his fifth-year option about a week or two ago on the deadline. Which again I think is smart. He hasn't played in 2 years. He played first week against Carolina, 2 year in 2021. Tore his ACL in the second quarter. Played a half there, tore his ACL, done for the year. Last season in training camp, hurt his knee again, needed another surgery, and missed all of last season. He hasn't played since 2020, the 2-14 year. A good way to describe Mekhi Becton's tenure so far as a Jet, and I've talked about this a lot, he has yet to play a game in front of New York Jets fans. He has yet to play a game because 2020 he played all the games. There was no fans because of COVID. They went 2-14, so even if there was fans allowed, I don't think there would have been many fans in the building. And then 2021, first week it was away in Carolina, and he tore his ACL. Now, obviously there were some Jets fans there, but it was still an away game. They weren't home. And he blew out his knee, missed the entire season. And then you go to last year, and in training camp, before the season even starts, he blows out his knee. So he's entering his fourth year in the NFL, and he's played one season, and he's missed 2 years with injury. So it makes sense why they didn't pick up his fifth-year option. You're not going to do that on a guy that hasn't played, really. Now, if he goes out there this season and is the dominant self that he was in 2020, where he was one of the better rookie offensive linemen, you're like, all right, you consider giving him a deal. But after his comments yesterday, and it seems like more and more we talk about Becton, and more we talk about him going into the season, it seems like there seems to be a growing shift between him and the coaching staff. And he had this to say. It made no sense to put me at right tackle, he said. I hurt my knee. That's going to be the knee that I put the most pressure on while backpedalling in pass protection. I explained it to the coaches, but no one cared. Becton said his knee didn't feel right in training camp last year on the day he was injured, and the end result was another lost season. I got forced to play a position I don't play, and then I was pretty much telling them I wasn't feeling good the whole time throughout camp. And I was told I shouldn't be complaining. He said, go out there and do it. I was limping throughout the whole practice, and I just took a step on my knee, and my knee buckled, and I got hurt again and had to get reconstructive surgery. So that basically, that kind of encapsulates what he said and his frustration with the franchise. And again, look, I don't know, I'm sure they'll ask, Saleh, and I don't not believe this. I do. I think I believe this to a certain extent with Becton, where they were trying to have him push through it, where they needed him to get reps, they needed him to get out there because they needed him ready for the season. I also think when Becton said that he was going to get the left tackle job was his, Saleh basically said that day in a press conference that you've got to prove it. You've got to earn it. So to be honest with you, even with Becton on the roster, he hasn't been given anything yet. And I think that's kind of what I'm getting here from this quote in the coaching staff is he's got to earn it. This is a guy that even though he was the 11th overall pick 3 years ago and he had a great rookie season, he hasn't played in 2 years. And yes, he looks great. Yes, he's lost a lot of weight, all that stuff. But he hasn't played in 2 years. There's a big difference from training, getting ready, and going out there against some of the better edge rushers in football and being able to stop them. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Becton can do. I think he's going to have a very big year. But he does have to prove it. It's not going to be given to him. He has to go out there and prove it. He lost it. He not lost his job, but he had injuries. Other guys took over. They made impacts. And now he's got to come back, and he's got to prove why he can stay. He's got to prove first he can stay healthy and why he should have that job. And the Jets were trying him at right tackle because they felt, with some other guys, they were better at left tackle. They felt, with Becton, with the injury, he would do better at right tackle. And who even knows if he is the left tackle this year? We'll see. So it's an interesting spot for Becton. Again, I start to get the feeling now that even if Becton has a good year, even if Becton goes out there this year and has a good season, you start to wonder what his future really is. Like, is he even back next year? I really wonder that. I really do. Is he even back with the Jets next year if he has a good year this year? Now, if he goes down, has a monster season, is a Pro Bowl, and all that stuff, you assume they probably have to. Either they maybe put the tag on him. That's maybe the Jets thought process. If he goes out there this year and has a good year, you put the tag on him, and then you go out next year. You see what he can do. If he has another big year, then you give him an extension. If he has an okay year, and maybe if he has a big year, you give him the extension. If he has an okay year, you give him a tag and give him another opportunity. It's a tough spot for the Jets. It really is. But declining the fifth-year option, I think, is all you need to know about how they feel about him. Not in a bad way, but that he needs to prove it. They're not just going to hand him over a fifth year here. They're not just going to hand him over a contract when he's barely played. And I think sometimes that gets lost in the fan base. Like, he was so good his rookie year, and everyone just assumes, he's going to be back to dominant Becton we all assumed. And I think he'll have a good year, but he's still got to go out there and prove it. This is still a guy that hasn't played in 2 seasons. He hasn't played a game at MetLife in front of Jets fans. That right there just tells you all what you need to know there. And we'll see how it all plays out. But you hope that he can be a big cog because you need him to be a big cog in that offensive line. You really do. And again, it's May 23rd. There's a lot more time left. There's a lot more time for maybe a little bit of this shift or rift between the coaching staff and Becton to get evened out before training camp. But once training camp comes, you've got to be ready to go, and it's going to be a very interesting left tackle, right tackle competition heading into camp. A lot to look forward to there with the offensive line. That's obviously, again, the most competitive position. Everything else you feel pretty good about. Safety spot, linebacker, defensive line. The only thing with the defensive line is getting Quinnen and making sure that he's ready to go. Once they get the extension done, which I think they will. But it is going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting spot for the New York Jets here with Becton as we get ready for the season. And we all want to see him do well. It sucks getting injured 2 years in a row. Missing 2 seasons in a row has got to be awful. I mean, it must have felt like years for him to get back. Sitting and watching the games the past 2 seasons must have been awful. Missing 1 year in itself, like Breece Hall. The recovery, the timeline is so long, it's so rigorous, and it must feel like time is going so slow. It must feel like every day goes by so slow when you're in rehab and when you're trying to get back out there on the field and when you know that you're not going to play at all the rest of the season. And I think Becton's going to I think he's going to have a very big year, but It's gonna, he's got to prove it. At the end of the day, he's got to prove it, and you kind of get that sense maybe a little bit that he feels like it's his already, which isn't a bad thing, but he's got to prove it. He's got to go out there and prove why he should be the starting tackle, and we'll see what he does. So OTAs starting up yesterday, throughout the day today. Seeing Rodgers in a Jets jersey yesterday was awesome. That was amazing. Or Jets helmet, I should say, not a Jets jersey. Seeing him just throw passes. Again, we're at that point in the offseason now where it's just like, just seeing Rodgers in a Jets helmet is amazing. And soon we'll get to the point where it's like, all right, get us to training camp. Let's see him, let's see him in person. And it's like, all right, get us to the season. There's always those slow little steps along the way in the NFL offseason with all the excitement building up. All right, so tonight you got a lot going on in the baseball world as we close things out here on a Tuesday program. You got the Yankees and the Orioles tonight, 7:05 on Yes. I saw something yesterday about the Yankees and the Orioles, or Yankees upcoming 6 games against the Orioles and the Padres, and it was something like the next 4 or 5 of the next 6 games for the Yankees, you got to have a streaming service. Or it was like 4 of the next 6. I forget what it was. To watch the games. So basically, you've got to have, I think it's tomorrow's games on Prime. I think Friday's games on Apple TV Plus. And there was like one other game I thought it was that was on some streaming service. It might have been Prime, Apple TV Plus. Maybe it might have been 2 Prime games and an Apple TV Plus. I forget exactly. It was something stupid, and I hate all the streaming services. This past weekend, you had the game on Peacock on Sunday. Their Sunday morning leadoff game, they call it. And I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not a big fan of Peacock. It was all right. The broadcast was all right. The graphics and stuff were good. They were fine. But it was just, it was 11:30. It wasn't bad timing of the game. I actually enjoyed the game at 11:30 because the game gets done now with the pitch clock and the game shorter. The game got done around like 2. And, it was like 2:30, I think the game was end. Or not even 2:30, it was like 2. It was like 2:05 when the game was done. Or no, it was like 2:30. It was more than, no. Yeah, it was like 2:07 or something when the game was finished. It was like 2.5 hours. Game was quick, right? And you have the rest of your day to do everything. Unlike a 1:30 game that gets done around 4, and you don't quite have the rest of the day. So I kind of enjoyed that time of game. That 3 or that 11:30 game, but it was behind, very behind. Streaming services is very behind. Like it's 2-3 pitches behind the live action. That's what I got anyway. I was getting the updates on my phone, which I don't look at during the innings, obviously, really, other than if something happens. But I was getting the updates on my phone before the home runs were even hit. Bader's home run was hit. I look at my phone, and I had an update there already for like a minute. So I was a good minute behind. And maybe it was something on mine. I just think these streaming services are dumb. I do. Unfortunately, it's the way we're going. It's the direction we're heading. But you just don't like Prime. It always lags and glitches out. Like I had Peacock glitch out on me twice where the screen just froze and then it turned black and took you back to the Peacock main screen. I had that happen to me twice. And every once in a while, it will just cut in and out. Like the screen will get blurry, it'll pause for a second and unpause. Screen will get blurry, pause for a second, unpause. It's just the streaming services. It's frustrating. I don't know why they're in love with it. They're in love with it because of all the money it brings in for these, these leagues. Amazon Prime, the Yankees got a big deal with, so they're always getting Prime games. Apple TV Plus is horrible. I think out of all of them, Apple TV Plus is probably the worst because the broadcasters are terrible. They are horrendous. The graphics are good. Graphics are very good. Very clear graphics. A lot more. The cameras are a lot more higher quality than Yes Network. But the graphics and everything are good, but the broadcasters are abysmal. And I'm not saying I'm some star-studded play-by-play guy, but man, the broadcasters are bad, really bad. That's Apple TV Plus. So I just like the games on Yes. Give me 7 o'clock games on Yes, and I'm fine with it. I don't want any of this, 11:30 on Peacock, or just give me the good old-fashioned day games on Yes Network or ESPN or Fox, one of these easy access networks. Unfortunately, it's where we're heading. We're heading in a direction. We're heading in a world where streaming services are so large now. And it's unfortunate because, and a lot of people can't access them. I'm lucky that, I'm able to get, Apple TV Plus and Prime and stuff, but it's not everybody's able to access all these different streaming services. I mean, I made a Peacock account to watch it one time a year because I think every team gets the leadoff spot one time a year. I think every team gets on it once, at least once. And I'm always like last year it was Yankees White Sox, I think it was, that was on it, the leadoff spot. It might have been the White Sox last year, or Tiger. It was the Tigers, I think, last year. So I got it last year and I'll get it again this year. I'll never use it. I won't use it again until next year when the Yankees are back on Peacock. So it's interesting. But yeah, anyway, tonight's game's on, yes. So if you're looking forward to tonight's game, you'll be able to watch it. The next couple games, it depends on if you have those streaming services. But Kyle Bradish will be on the mound for the Orioles. He's 2-1 with a 3.90 ERA. And Garrett Cole will be on the mound for the Yankees. He's 5-0 with a 2.01 ERA. Yankees 29-20, Orioles 31-16. And then the Mets, as I mentioned as well, on tonight against the Cubs, 7:40 Eastern. Mets 25-23, 5 straight wins versus the Cubs 20-26. Mets got Kodai Senga on the mound, coming off of his best start so far as his MLB career, 4-2 with a 3.77 ERA at a 12 strikeout performance against the Rays. And the Cubs got Drew Smyly on the mound. He's 4-1 with a 2.86 ERA there for the Mets and the Cubs. You also got hockey, as I mentioned, as well tonight, and the NBA. Stars Golden Knights, Game 3. Stars look to avoid the horrible or death sentence of a 3-0 hole, I guess if you want to call it. And then tonight, the Heat look to sweep the Celtics, and the Celtics look to find a way to force a Game 5 back at Boston and, see if they can start to climb on a 3-0 series deficit back. 3-0 series are, I think, the all-time record is like 0 and something crazy. 3-1 series in itself is crazy. Like when LeBron and the Cavs came back from down 3-1 that was wild. 3-0, whole nother monster. Because especially if you're on the road, because if you're on the road and you're down 3-0, you got to win. Well, you got to win Game 4 at home. Game 5, you go back on the road, or no, Game 5, yeah. Game 6, you're back home, and in Game 7, if you're down 3-0 and you're on the road or down 3-1 or whatever it is, Game 7's in the other team's building. If you're home, if you have the home court like the Celtics do, you would get Game 7 at home if it gets to that point, which I guess would help, but the Celtics got blown out of their building 2 nights in a row, 2 nights this series already. It's not going to happen. Again, I said there's probably more of a chance the Lakers were going to come back on the Nuggets just because it's LeBron and he's done it before. He's done a 3-1 before. He's never came back from down 3-0, but he's done 3-1 before. So that's why I thought if there was a chance of the Celtics or the Lakers coming back, it would have been the Lakers. They got swept. Celtics, they gave up on their coach. Their coach lost the locker room. That's not a good recipe for success. So I'm taking the Heat tonight to sweep the Celtics. And that'll do it. So a lot going on. OTAs continuing. Hockey tonight, basketball tonight. Hopefully the NBA Finals is a lot better than the 2 conference finals. Hopefully the NHL Stanley Cup. Florida won last night, so they take a 3-0 lead. They won 1-0. So that series is basically over. And the Stars look to get a win. Just get a win. Make one of these series go to 5 games. Because I have a feeling the Celtics aren't going to do it tonight. So, we'll see. But that'll do it. Another podcast in the books. Back-to-back days. Back-to-back shows. A lot more content coming your way. As always, hope you enjoyed it. And thanks for watching.